Love in the Skies. It was a rainy evening in late autumn when Ryan Carter, a successful but somewhat jaded corporate executive, found himself sitting in the waiting area of Gate 12 at Heathrow Airport. He had just wrapped up a grueling business meeting in London and was heading back to New York, exhausted and eager to get the whole trip over with. Ryan leaned back in his chair, his eyes skimming the various faces around him. He'd always been indifferent about airports, crowded, loud, and filled with people who all seemed to be rushing somewhere. Yet today, something felt different. He was more aware of the atmosphere, the excitement, and the buzz of the people around him. Maybe it was just the anticipation of going home, or perhaps it was the quiet hum of something else, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. The boarding call echoed over the loudspeakers, and Ryan stood up, dragging his roller bag behind him. The moment he stepped into the jet bridge, his gaze fell upon her. She was standing near the entrance to the plane, wearing the crisp uniform of an air hostess, a smile on her face that seemed to light up the entire area. Her name tag read, Isabella. Isabella Sanchez had been an air hostess for almost 3 years. She loved her job. There was something magical about it. She got to travel the world, meet new people, and, for brief moments, become part of their lives. But she'd always been careful not to get too involved. The nature of her job meant that relationships could be fleeting, and she preferred to keep her heart untouched by the transient world of travel. As Ryan approached her to show his boarding pass, their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to slow. There was something magnetic about her presence, something more than just the professional charm she exuded. Ryan couldn't help but notice the way her dark eyes held a spark of life, a hint of curiosity behind her polite smile. There was a warmth to her, a kindness, and something that caught his attention in a way that no one had in a long time. "Good evening, sir. Welcome aboard," Isabella said in a soft yet confident voice. There was a subtle accent to her words, perhaps Spanish or something Latin American. Ryan's curiosity deepened, but he just nodded and gave her a polite smile, not wanting to draw attention. As he passed by, she handed him the usual instructions about the flight. Ryan took a moment to glance back at her, only to find that she was already attending to other passengers. The flight was uneventful, as most flights are. Ryan spent most of the time with his headphones in, trying to block out the noisy hum of the cabin. However, every now and then his eyes would find their way back to Isabella as she worked, effortlessly moving through the aisles, making sure everyone was comfortable, and exchanging pleasantries with the passengers. Midway through the flight, Isabella made her way toward Ryan's seat, offering snacks and drinks. When she reached him, their eyes met once again. "Can I offer you anything, sir?" she asked, her voice warm. Ryan looked up from his laptop, still a little surprised by the momentary connection they'd shared earlier. "Just some water, please." She nodded and returned a few moments later with a bottle of water. As she handed it to him, their fingers brushed slightly, and Ryan felt a jolt of electricity shoot through him. It was as if the moment held an unspoken promise, one that neither of them had fully acknowledged. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice quieter than usual. Isabella smiled, a small but knowing smile that made Ryan feel both understood and unsettled. "You're welcome," she said softly before moving on to the next row. As the flight continued, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this brief interaction. He found himself glancing toward the front of the cabin, watching Isabella as she moved gracefully between the aisles. There was something magnetic about her, a presence that he couldn't ignore. It wasn't long before the captain's voice echoed through the intercom, announcing that the plane would be landing in New York in about 30 minutes. As the plane began its descent, Ryan's thoughts were still preoccupied with the air hostess. He had been in relationships before, many in fact, but none had left an impression quite like this. The plane finally touched down, and the usual post-flight bustle began. Passengers started unbuckling their seat belts, grabbing their things, and preparing to disembark. Ryan was one of the last passengers to leave, hoping for one more chance to speak to Isabella, to understand what it was about her that had intrigued him so much. As he walked down the aisle toward the exit, he saw Isabella standing near the door, her uniform still immaculate, her smile still in place. but there was a softness to her demeanor now, as if the formalities of the job were briefly forgotten. Ryan hesitated for a moment before walking up to